WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, we'll hear from a local DJ and producer about a new course at Wayne State University that teaches hip-hop and its history.
But first on the Metro, in an age when truth seems to be in short supply, this election year has become an important crossroads for many. Increased political polarization combined with the rise of misinformation and disinformation is causing many to wonder, how did we get to this point? Can our institutions hold up under this increased burden? And is there any way to reverse these trends? One person thinking a lot about these questions is Michigan law professor Barb McQuade. As a former assistant U.S. attorney who served as deputy chief in national security, she has seen firsthand how the spread of misinformation is a serious threat. To help us learn more about the problem, I sat down with Professor McQuade, author of the new book, Attack from Within, to get her insights on the issue. I began the conversation by asking Barb to explain how disinformation, in her view, is sabotaging America.
Well, Nick, because of the ability to spread information so quickly and so widely on the internet, social media, other platforms, we are seeing disinformation just flooding the zone for people, and it's difficult for people to make sense of what's true and what's not. But it's having a real impact on society, one in terms of democracy. So, based on the false pretense of a stolen election in 2020, we have seen many states enact new laws making it harder to vote. And when it's harder to vote, it means certain groups are going to be denied access to the ballot box. And it has a disparate impact on people of color, on students, on people on lower socioeconomic groups. And so it is affecting democracy in that way. Another way it is affecting us is through public safety. We have this outrage that gets stirred online through deliberate efforts we've learned from a Facebook whistleblower that there is this desire to generate outrage online. And when people believe that people are shutting down businesses based on false claims of COVID and that people are conspiring against you to steal your rights, it's not surprising that we see violence, political violence. So, the plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer was certainly a result of, people who were angry and whose anger had been stewed online. The attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband by a QAnon conspiracy believer. The effort by a man to break into an FBI office with an assault weapon after Donald Trump claimed that the FBI had planted evidence in his home. All of these spur people to action, to vigilante violence. And so I think in all of these ways, our society is being harmed by falsities that people believe to be true.
I think some people would tell you, hey, since the printing press, yellow journalism, right, we've had misinformation, but you kind of allude to how social media and the frictionlessness or the ease of generating it might be having an impact. For those who might be not as familiar with disinformation, how it's spread, how have you seen it grow? Like, why is it more of a problem now than it used to be before?
Yeah, Nick, that's such a great point. Certainly propaganda and deception have been around for centuries. The Trojan horse was a lie, right? Posing as a gift with soldiers inside. So we've seen these issues before, but what has changed, is you put your finger on it, is social media allows us to reach people instantly, and it allows bad actors to abuse these platforms. I became interested in this topic with a course I teach at Michigan Law School on national security, and I have a background, of course, as a national security prosecutor. And reading in Robert Mueller's report about how Russia used false personas online to impersonate people and to fool people into believing they were grassroots political activists, people who shared characteristics with them, and then use those platforms to sow division, push people apart, and discourage people from voting. For example, there were fake accounts that started many months before the election on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and elsewhere with identities like Blacktivist or United Muslims of America, or Tennessee GOP, or Heart of Texas. And people thought these were real people just like me.
Yeah.
And they would say things that were very reasonable, things that most members of those groups would agree with. And they developed followers, thousands and thousands of followers over many months leading up to the election. But then when the election came was the time to really sow division and push people apart. So, for example, Blacktivist said things just before the election like, Hillary Clinton has never done anything for our community, and she's taking our community for granted. Therefore, we should show her that we are not to be taken for granted by not voting for her on election day. We should stay home and send a message. We'll never know how many people read that and believed it and thought their friend Blacktivist was sharing this sentiment, but the same thing across all groups for different reasons. And, posing as people and saying outrageous things to cause other people to become outraged, when in fact, these are all just a bunch of, Russian operatives in a sweatshop somewhere in Moscow. And so in this way, we are seeing false information pervading American society and driving us apart. The reason we are so angry at each other is because there are people, and not just from outside our borders, now political operatives within our borders, who are working to stoke our anger to drive divisions in society for their political gain, their personal profit, or to promote themselves.
How do we get ourselves out of this mess, Barb?
Well, I don't know that there's any one solution that can solve all of our problems, and I don't even know if a collection of these solutions can solve every problem. But I do think there are a number of things we can do to reduce disinformation and get back to talking to each other about facts. Some are at the governmental level and some are more at the individual level. So I'll just tell you a couple at the governmental level. I think one is we need to regulate social media. I don't mean that means that we have to completely remove all of their immunity from legal liability the way they have now, but we have allowed it to grow completely unchecked. And maybe that is what has allowed all of this innovation, but it has also created problems, and it's time to rein that in. And we can do it with some very modest fixes, I think. I'm not an advocate for moderating content because content, I think, at least legally requiring platforms to moderate content, they can certainly do that on their own as a matter of their own contract principles and community standards. But I think what we can do is moderate their algorithms. We know from this whistleblower at Facebook named Frances Haugen that Facebook, for example, has algorithms designed to push content toward all of us that generates outrage. We can tell them you can't do that. You have to sift through things at users' preferences, or you have to at least disclose the algorithms out there so people know when they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
I think those are things that we can do in compliance with the First Amendment. I think we can reform the way we deal with campaign finance laws. The Supreme Court had a ruling about 10 years ago in a case called Citizens United that said corporations, labor unions, and other organizations cannot be limited in their spending on campaigns because that is a violation of the First Amendment and money is speech. So the problem with that, of course, is that you've got now, it really threw open the doors to dark money where organizations with these names that sound really patriotic, like the Red, White, and Blue Grandmothers of America.
Who
hooray.
would be against them?
Right. Are expending millions of dollars on things when in fact it is some special interest group, a lobbying group for a particular industry or something. We could at least require disclosure of who is spending that money so that we would know, when we hear that message about how scary it is and we need to buy more guns, that's not the Red, White, and Blue Grandmothers of America, it's the NRA. I think that would be useful. So we could do that. And then on the individual side, some things that we could do is, one, I think we could improve our media literacy, help kids and adults learn how to be skeptical of what they read online. And I don't want to say we should distrust everything we read because then, we need information. So how do we get good information? But there are a number of ways we can do that. Looking for second sources. Don't just read the headline, read the story. Understand how data sets work and what's a reliable sample size. Understand the difference between causation and correlation. There are a lot of things we can do to help people understand what is real and what is not.
Yeah. Last question, if I can, because I know you got to get out of here.
Yep.
Asynchronicity is the thing that I'm thinking about when I hear this. And some folks who say, well, look, if I extend the hand out, that just gives my opponent an opportunity. It shows weakness and it gives them a chance to win. I know folks can be concerned about that, but you have some good stuff in your book about the need for us to come together. So what response would you have to that concern?
Yeah, such a great point, Nick. I think we need to get over winning. It's all about, truth and love. If we really care about our fellow man, it isn't about dunking on them or winning. And I think we've really lost that in our culture. When you think about the way we communicate online, it's all about likes and shares and snark. Instead, we need to show people grace and think about the way we interact with each other in real life. I think we also need to get out and interact with people in real life. Get out there. And if you find someone who does not share your political opinion, talk to them. It may be that they are relying on information that is not true. And I think rather than browbeating them and telling them they're wrong, we can get there by asking questions. What evidence do you have of that? What makes you think that? How do you know that? And I think if you peel back the onion enough, you'll realize there's no there. And I think by showing grace, we can help people, maybe reconsider their positions on things.
Browbeating's never been the way to convince me. I don't understand why we think it would be the way to convince others. You don't have to convince me.
But we're right, Nick. I'm right.
Right.
Come on, man.
You don't have to convince me to let you go, Barb. I appreciate the conversation. Barb McQuade, author of the new book, Attack from Within. Thanks for joining us on The Metro.
Thank you, Nick.
That was Michigan law professor and former assistant U.S. Attorney Barb McQuade. Her new book, Attack from Within, looks at disinformation, its impact on democracy, and strategies to combat the issue.
Coming up on The Metro, we'll talk about why the numbers, a style of gambling, was so prominent for Detroiters. Personally, I still have people in my family who say they're going to play the numbers. We'll hear more coming up next on The Metro.
It's The Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I am Tia Graham. And many of us who grew up with the family or families in Detroit have heard the numbers. The old gambling game, originally from Harlem, New York, found its way to Detroit and became a mainstay for Black families. In this conversation on Created Equal, host Stephen Henderson spoke with Felicia George, a professor of anthropology at Wayne State University, about her book, When Detroit Played the Numbers, and why the game was so important for city residents.
We were talking before we started the interview about how everybody has a story about the numbers, and that is especially true in Detroit, right?
Yes,
everyone has a story about a family member or a neighbor. So let's start with some just basic definitions. For people who maybe haven't heard these stories, what is the numbers, and why is it such an important part of Black history in Detroit?
It's really funny. Playing the numbers is just simply a game of chance. Today's Daily 3 Michigan Lottery stole it from the numbers, which came here in Detroit in probably about 1919, 1920. And you're right. Everybody has a story to tell about it. But what's so interesting about the numbers is as you track it over history and time, you see how it helped shape history. It's not just a game that, people play. It was so much more than that. Mm-hmm. It was a way for neighbors to come together in solidarity. It was a way for, at a time when Blacks were not afforded the opportunity to get loans, it financed business, it financed education. I mean, it did so much in the city of Detroit for the Black community when the formal economy shut down and was not very receptive to having Blacks in that realm.
Right. Like so much that's part of our culture, it grows out of discrimination, but we took it and made it into things that would work for us in ways that that mainstream economic systems were not. Let's explain to people how it worked.
Okay. So every numbers organization had their own unique ticket. So it was either, say, Yellow Dog or Big Four, and that's how you knew what organization you were playing with. And so that was another, checks and balance that kind of took place. So what would happen is you would go to your numbers writer, and you would say, for example, I want to play the number 801, and I want to box it. And boxing it means that any combination of that number, if it falls, you win. You're a winner. So if it fell 108 or 018, you were the winner.
And that's something that still works at the horse racing track, right? I mean, I'm somebody who spent 3 years living in Kentucky betting on horses, and you can put it in a box. Now you don't win as much money if you put it in a box as if you just play it straight. But you can say I want it in this order or that order or whatever order.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what was important was who decided what racetracks that was going to be the winning numbers. And so there was power in that. And so you would say, for instance, I want it to be the Downs racetrack. And when you would actually place your bet, you would tell your numbers writer, I'm playing the first 3 races or the last 3 races. And what that means is what the paper would print was the mutuals paid. What was the payout for that race? So, for example, the first race that would run, let's say, for instance, the payout was $18.90. The second race comes out and it's $77.50. And then the third race was like $114. How they would pick the winning number was you would look at those totals that were paid out. The first number in the decimal point is the number you're looking at. So for the first race, if that first number was a 8 in front of the decimal point, that was the first number that fell. The second race, if the first number in that decimal point was a 7, that's what fell. And then for the third race, if that number was a 4 in the decimal point, that's it. You've got your 3 digits. So you would open up the paper and you would go on this particular day, the first 3 races, the number in front of the decimal point was 874. And if you played 874, you won.
Yeah. And your writer would come back to you with the money. You didn't have to go get it and tell them, hey, I hit. They knew you hit.
They knew you hit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a lot of them were good in the sense that they didn't even have to write it down. Right? They knew they had the numbers in their head.
There were some people that had those great memories that they could memorize numbers. And it was actually a benefit to that. If you were good enough where you could memorize the numbers, you didn't have to worry about as much as getting caught by the police because you don't have number slips.
That's right, slips. That's right.
That was Created Equal host Stephen Henderson speaking with Wayne State professor Felicia George.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET. You just heard from Stephen Henderson, who's the host of Created Equal. Before that, we had a conversation with Barb McQuade about her new book, Attack from Within. And if you want to learn more about that from both of them, Stephen Henderson will be hosting a book discussion with Barbara McQuade next week on March 20th at 6 p.m. at the Detroit Public Library. Again, it's a question and answer session to follow the discussion on the book. More information is available at Professor McQuade's website, barbaramcquade.com. McQuade is how you spell McQuade. Don't get caught with the numbers, Tia. That's why you got to memorize them. That's called evidence. Mm-hmm. That's how they get you.
Evidence-based, man.
It is the Metro on 101.9 WDET. And when we return, we are going to take a look at a new grant that's been awarded for artists. And the Metro continues here on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin alongside Tia Graham.
Hello.
And the Gilbert Family Foundation is giving money to 10 Detroit artists to develop ideas that embedded art in city neighborhoods. WDET's Sasha Ryan visited Asia Hamilton, the owner of the Norwest Gallery of Arts and one of the artists selected for the grant.
Asia Hamilton wears many hats.
I'm Mama Asia, I'm TT, I'm all of the things.
She's a photographer with a long history in the arts. She serves on Detroit's Entertainment Commission, is the founder of the arts residency program called Woman House, and is the owner of the Norwest Gallery of Arts.
Curator, director, auntie, dog mom. These are my hats that I'm wearing and juggling all at the same time.
Hamilton says it was as important to her to root her gallery in Rosedale Park, where she grew up, as it was to make space for emerging African and African American artists. She says there were no spaces like this when she was emerging.
In 2002, when I graduated from college, that nobody was, really checking for Black art. So I had to create a lane for myself so that I could, be successful in the arts.
She says it's hard to make money with emerging artists. They don't have a following. They don't have experience marketing themselves.
but it's still needed. Where do they go? What do they do? I just had a soft spot for the new artists coming along that needed a little bit of mentorship. So, this space was that hug.
The Gilbert Family Foundation's Seed and Bloom initiative is offering a kind of hug to 10 Detroit BIPOC artists to support building sustainable, neighborhood-based arts businesses. The artists will divide $1.5 million over 3 years and get technical assistance and business training from strategic planning partners, ArtSpace, and United States artists.
I'm really excited about this program because, I'm coming in as a business owner, but I was an artist, I didn't know all of the technical terms when it came to the business. I just kind of dived into it and did it because I needed to.
Hamilton says the Gilbert grant will help her find a permanent home for Woman House and a larger space for the Norwest Gallery. She's opening a Norwest Gallery exhibit space in the Founders Hotel in April in time for the NFL draft coming to the city. She's also one of the artists who will share COVID-era work in a show at MSU in June. The Norwest Gallery of Art's current exhibit, Heavy Melanin, runs through the end of April.
That was WDET's Sasha Ryan speaking with artist and grant winner Asia Hamilton.
Coming up, we'll explore what a relocation effort means for the African American Historical Museum in Washtenaw County. You all stay right there. This is The Metro.
This is The Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I am Tia Graham. Just really quickly, before we get into our next conversation, a weather forecast today. Mostly sunny skies with a high around 70 degrees. There's a slight chance of rain this afternoon after 5 p.m. Thursday, showers are expected after 11, and it's going to be mostly cloudy with a high around 62. Getting a little cooler. Friday, rain is expected before 8 a.m. It'll be mostly cloudy Friday with a high around 51 degrees, and Saturday, 54 degrees, partly sunny. So looking pretty decent for March here in Michigan. Now, the African American Cultural and Historical Museum of Washtenaw County aims to research, collect, and preserve the work of Black people in Washtenaw County. Initially founded back in 1993 with no walls, the museum has curated and presented over 100 events, programs, including historic Underground Railroad programs and bus tours throughout Washtenaw County. Recently, the Song Foundation Board of Trustees approved a grant of $150,000 for the planning and restoration of a historic farmhouse property in Ann Arbor to become its new permanent headquarters. Song Foundation Executive Director Kalila Burton-Gaston joins us on the Metro to chat more about what's happening with the African American Cultural and Historical Museum of Washtenaw County. Kalila, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro. Welcome back to WDET.
Oh, thank you, Tia. It's nice to be here again.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least you're here in the studio. Last time we spoke on the island, Mackinac Island, but it's great to have you in studio.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So, Kalila, what are there any other changes about this museum that will be accompanied with this move?
Well, I think the first and foremost, the most important one is just having a physical location. As you mentioned, the museum has operated without walls since 1993. Having a permanent physical location will give them an opportunity to really convene residents and visitors in one location, to host more community conversations and, temporary exhibits and permanent exhibits, and also just be a permanent kind of repository for all of the oral histories that they have currently.
Which is amazing. If you go through the website that they have up right now, you can see some of the oral histories that they have just there that you can listen to. Mm-hmm. I have a personal connection. I have family who came to Washtenaw County through the Great Migration. So they did come to Detroit, and they ended up in Washtenaw County.
That's
so
wonderful.
Just to have that kind of connection, it was really, really great to see that this will possibly have its own permanent home soon. So just taking a little step back, for those who don't know and understand what the Song Foundation actually does, give us a rundown.
Yeah, so the Song Foundation is founded by Doug and Lynn Song. Many people, especially in Washtenaw County, know Doug and Lynn personally. They founded the foundation in 2019, and so I came on board about 2 years ago to really help launch the public facing aspect of the foundation. And so we are an active family foundation. We invest in cities in southeastern Michigan, including Flint and Detroit and Dearborn, and then obviously Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. And we really like to amplify power and prosperity and joy within the region by investing in people and organizations who are doing really great things.
And speaking of great things that's happening right now, why is it so important, you think, to, number one, preserve this museum and make sure that it has a permanent home, but to highlight everything and everyone that was involved in the growth of Washtenaw County?
Yeah, I think this kind of investment opportunity really highlights how we want to partner with organizations. So one, they have a great volunteer corps that have been helping to run and operate the museum. There was definitely a community that had rallied around the museum and helped to get it to this point. They are investing in a physical location and making sure that it's environmentally friendly and it's accessible to everyone. And so our resources will just help get them to that next point. And so we actually are investing a total of $300,000. They have a gap of about $200,000 left to raise for their capital campaign in order to open the doors this August.
Wow. So when I think about this space, of course, and I think about the African American Cultural and Historical Museum of Washtenaw County, I think about the fact that not a lot of us knew that it exists. And I think because since 93, it's had no walls, it didn't have a permanent location, and it's celebrating 31 years this year. 30.
Yeah.
1 year. So let me get my math correct. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a journalist. However, so when we think about that longevity and that history there, and you all helping to step in and help them collect those funds, in what ways do you see this helping the community at large that's already been impacted by this museum?
Well, I think it's important to make history visible. I was a student at the University of Michigan who came to Ann Arbor in the 1990s, 1994, not the 1900s. And I was searching to try to find, my community, and a lot of this history was really invisible. And then as a student, I came to learn about the rich history of African Americans in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. And so I think it's important, for people to understand, who have come before them, community leaders, and one, to understand the Byrds, who actually were very instrumental in Ann Arbor. Mr. and Mrs. Byrd were community leaders. Letitia Byrd was the first Citizen of the Year. All of this history really isn't known and isn't recognized. And I think it's important for youth and just other residents to know their full history and to honor that legacy.
Which I find, number one, fascinating. Once again, just growing up in this area, not really knowing the presence of Black people in Washtenaw County, and just always thinking, maybe they just kind of trickled in or whatnot. But there was an actual huge history there. And it's also important to know that there's the history of the Underground Railroad.
That's right.
Being so close to Canada and having those connections as well. So preserving those histories and preserving all that information is absolutely invaluable.
Yes, and David Byrd was a prominent architect in Ann Arbor. He was one of the first faculty members of Washtenaw Community College. And so, like you said, it's important to tell the full story of our communities. And I think, that helps us all understand our place, not only in history, but our place in communities in the future.
So when we think about this project in particular, and you talked about your stomping grounds was Ann Arbor for 4+ years, or however years you were in school, but it was your stomping ground. So what excites you about this project in particular?
Well, I'm a history nerd or just a nerd in general, but as an urban planner, I love discovering all of the nuances of communities, understanding who leaders were, and just how people live kind of in everyday life. And so I'm really excited to see kind of the exhibits and also hear a lot of the oral histories in the community and how, over time, the city of Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County has been shaped. And unfortunately, right, a lot of that history has been lost. You think about the Old West Side, if you were to drive through that in downtown Ann Arbor, currently you wouldn't see a lot of vestiges, right, of that community. And so again, I think the museum is really, all museums are powerful for making what's invisible visible and reminding us of our collective humanity.
All righty, then. Well, one of my last questions to you is, as you were going forward and we're thinking about preservation and preserving different histories and stories and just content in general, what role does the Song Foundation play in helping these spaces grow?
Yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, right in line with our strategy. We want to invest in innovative ideas. And sometimes, right, innovation is just doing the hard thing, right? It's collaborating in new and inspiring ways. We seek to really align and to invest resources in activities and ideas that are embraced by community and led by community. And so, like I said, this is almost one of the best case scenarios for an investment for us.
Before I let you go, I always ask, are you from the city of Detroit?
I am not.
Oh, okay. Where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Anderson, Indiana, right outside of Indianapolis.
It's all right. Midwest all day. I love that.
That's right.
Song Foundation Executive Director Kalila Burt Gaston. Thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll hear about how hip-hop is changing with a new hip-hop producer and teacher at Wayne State University. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET, where I'm Nick Austin alongside Tia Graham, and we've got things happening all around us, including Michigan. We mentioned how it's going to be such an important site for our upcoming election, and President Joe Biden is making a 2-day trip to the Midwest this week as part of his re-election campaign. He'll be making stops in Wisconsin and Michigan starting today. Biden is hoping to continue some positive momentum after he clinched the Democratic nomination yesterday and after his State of the Union address last week. Biden won Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania in 2020 and likely needs to do the same to be reelected this year. Former President Donald Trump flipped the 3 states in favor of the Republican ticket the prior election in 2016. All eyes on Michigan, all eyes on the Midwest. All ears, though.
On the Metro. I like that. Nice wordplay.
I am not a hip-hop producer. I am not a poet. I am none of those things. But I am here to give you some more of the news that is happening. And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is in a really bad place right now, speaking of things that are impacting our politics even here locally. Right now, as war in Gaza continues and events unfold in that side of the world, the U.S. here is reconsidering the way it's approaching the conflict. One idea now coming up is for America to officially recognize Palestine as a state. NPR's Greg Myrie looked into the option.
When Israel declared statehood in 1948, U.S. President Harry Truman endorsed the move exactly 11 minutes later, making the U.S. the first country to recognize Israel as a nation.
But don't think that decision to recognize Israel is an easy one.
That's Truman speaking about it after leaving the White House.
What I was trying to do was to find a homeland for the Jews and still be just with the Arabs.
There were lots of unanswered questions at the time. Israel didn't have fixed borders. It was facing war with multiple Arab states. And it wasn't clear if the new Jewish state would even survive. Yet Truman used his authority to act unilaterally. Today, there's talk of a similar approach with the Palestinians. Here's Britain's Foreign Minister, David Cameron, on recognizing a Palestinian state.
That can't come at the start of the process, but it doesn't have to be the very end of the process. It could be something that we consider as this advance to a solution becomes more real. What we need to do is give the Palestinian people a horizon towards a better future, the future of having a state of their own.
Actually, 139 nations already recognize a Palestinian state. At the United Nations, the Palestinians have something called non-member observer status. This gives the Palestinians a seat at the UN, but not much more in practical terms. Notably, no Western power has recognized Palestinian statehood. Ali Jarbawi is a political science professor at Birzeit University in the West Bank. He says recognition would give the Palestinians a big boost.
We need pressure from the United States and the rest of the world.
He says negotiations, which began in the 1990s, have always given Israel the upper hand.
For the past 30 years, the subject of creating a Palestinian state was left solely to Israel. So Israel has a veto power on whether to create a Palestinian state or not.
Jarbawi says upfront recognition would strengthen the Palestinian position at the bargaining table. But Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu says he completely rejects unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. Michael Oren also opposes such a move. He's a former Israeli ambassador to the U.S.
You have an Israeli population which right now is dead set against talking about Palestinian statehood.
He says most Israelis would see statehood as a reward for Hamas, which ignited the current war with its October 7th assault on Israel. Oren acknowledges Israel will face pressure to make concessions to the Palestinians when the fighting ends. But he doesn't think U.S. diplomacy, led by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, will reverse longstanding policy that calls for Israelis and Palestinians to negotiate an end to the conflict.
When the Secretary of State Blinken says that Israel wants to talk about a pathway to a Palestinian state, I think Israel should say, okay, we'll talk about a pathway. A pathway can be many things. It's not committing you in any way, and it's keeping the dialogue open.
The current war in Gaza is the bloodiest fighting ever between the two sides, and a negotiated deal right now doesn't appear realistic. The last time the Israelis and Palestinians seemed close to an agreement was the year 2000. Larry Garber is a retired American diplomat who once ran the U.S. aid program, or USAID, in the Palestinian territories. U.S. recognition of a Palestinian state isn't a magic solution, he says, but it could improve the dynamics.
I think that the most important part is just the psychological impact that it would have in the Palestinian territories. It's going to give a big boost to those who've been pushing peaceful negotiations with the goal of creating a Palestinian state.
The State Department is looking at possible recognition as part of a broad review of U.S. policies in the Mideast. Right now, there's no sign the U.S. is prepared to take such a step, and all the thorny issues remain. They include the status of Jerusalem, which both sides claim as a capital, and the fate of the 500,000 Jewish settlers in the West Bank. Like others long involved with this issue, Garber says he's realistic.
This isn't something that the U.S. can make happen tomorrow.
But after so many failed efforts, he thinks it's time to try a new approach.
That was NPR's Greg Myrie investigating what it would mean if the U.S. were to declare Palestine a state. This is The Metro on 101.9 WDET, where I'm Nick Austin alongside Tia Graham.
Indeed, indeed.
The Metro on 101.9 WDET. Coming up, we're about to hear about how hip-hop is changing with a hip-hop producer and new advisor at Wayne State University. It just goes together. 313 Day hip-hop here, broadcasting with a man, really good name. But we'll save that on the other side as we continue on The Metro. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I am Tia Graham. And, I am joined by someone who has a similar name.
Similar? It's the same name.
It is.
There's only room in this studio for one Nick.
Lies told on the internet. We talked about fake news today, Nick. All right. Hip hop means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And in Detroit, it takes a special significance. Think about some of the greats that come out of the city of Detroit, like Jay Dilla, Big Sean, Eminem, Cash Doll, Danny Brown, T Grizzly. There's so many more names that we can get into. However, Wayne State is honoring the general as a new special topics course and being brought to the university. Let's start that all over again. Wayne State is honoring hip hop with a special new course, and it's taught by Nick Speed, who's here with me right now. The course will follow hip-hop's origins, its development, and its adoption into mainstream culture, roughly from the 1970s until today. The course will take a special interest in Black cultural influences on the genre. Nick Speed is here, and he has the beats, and he has the grooves and the moves. Nick, thank you so much for joining us and telling us a little bit more about this course that you're helping impact.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege, and I wouldn't want to spend my 313 day anywhere else but on WDET.
Yeah. And
right?
I
Makes
always
sense.
ask, Detroiter, what side you from?
West Side.
West Side, me too.
Dexter. Stand up.
Yep. I feel that 100%. So you've worked in hip hop for a while. You've been DJing, you've been spinning, you've been all through the city of Detroit and its music scene. Why do you want to teach it at Wayne State?
Well, I just feel like, first of all, I just have a passion for hip hop. I just love hip hop. And there's a lot of people like me that really love hip hop as well. And it's actually become like the top genre in the world, and just for us to even witness that is just amazing because, at one point in time, they thought it was going to be a fad and, they thought that hip hop would never last. Even like when I was a kid, they were, just scuffing at it and saying like, that's not what you want to do. And, but hip hop saved a lot of lives, and I just think it's important that we're able to teach it on a collegiate level. Because there's a lot of people that were even in the class that were not familiar with any of the music, but they were just interested in the stories. It's kind of like I was inspired by Muhammad Ali, even though I'm not a boxer. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like certain stories just inspire you, and, what's better than, rooting for the underdog.
Exactly. And hip hop, now we're at the 51-year mark. Last year was 50. This year's the 51-year mark. Why do you think it's so important that someone like you, who's kind of been raised and born in hip hop, to inform this class, like to help with the class and help with what's being taught in the curriculum?
Well, I'm not just a fan, but I'm a participant in hip hop, so I can see it from a different set of eyes, and I could explain it in a different way from experience and actually going through these things myself, other than just picking up a few magazines and watching videos and stuff when we was growing up. You know what I mean? It's like, I've been on that stage. I've been behind the camera. I've been in front of the camera. Like, I've been in the studio. I could tell you the creative process, and I could tell you what, makes something special to me. What makes it stand out to me as a fan, and as a participant in hip hop. Like, it's just like, with basketball, like some people would say that, oh yeah, Michael Jordan's the greatest, but like, some other people just say that because that's what everybody else says. They don't know what qualifies him to be the greatest. Yeah. But I can tell you what qualifies some of these artists to be considered what they are. But at the same time, we have to remember that art is, subjective. So there is no greatest dancer. There is no greatest rapper. It's just your opinion. Everybody's going to have a different top 5 list. And that was one of the first things that we did, just to open the class up. And we went around the class and asked everybody who was their top 5. And that just got everybody excited.
What were some of the names on the list?
Oh man, it was everything from Project Pat to Houdini to Sexy Red. Oh man, they was going crazy. You know what I'm saying? And you heard a couple Nas's and Jay-Z's and the usuals. But once somebody started kind of going out of that box, then that's when everybody just started saying Project Pat and Jay Dilla and whatever. You know what I mean? They just went out the box. And then even the person who said Houdini, this guy was like 18 or something. But he was like, man, I got older parents, so that's basically the hip hop that I heard. And then he didn't really hear a lot of hip hop, in his own time. Like his friends wasn't like super hip hop like that because he was in the suburbs. So he was really interested in the class, and he had really good questions to ask us.
I love that. I think about growing up. My dad, Big Daddy Kane, was a huge staple. So let me listen to a lot of Big Daddy Kane.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think about something that you said a little bit earlier. You were talking about how hip hop has helped, save lives.
Yes.
In what ways do you, has it saved lives?
I mean, well, me being from Dexter, it's like a lot of the people who I grew up with didn't even make it to C18. And I actually saw this happening, you know what I mean? And, I knew that wasn't the life for me. And, by me picking music and just seeing that I could be something other than what I see on the corner or just on my block, I'm here today to speak about it. You know what I mean? There's some people that never left the block or didn't get a chance to or didn't even live past 16 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just amazing. I wish they did have something that they could have been passionate about and said, well, I'm going to get great at this. And, it's like when you become passionate about something, like I spent hours in my room just DJing for all night and all day. And, it was nothing else to do anyway. You know what I mean? Except for go outside and ride bikes and get in trouble. It's like, hey, that kept me out of trouble by me being in the room, DJing, figuring it out, not even having a teacher. And it even actually probably propelled my intelligence. You know what I mean? It's like I wasn't necessarily the best math student, but, since music is nothing but math and science, I can count real good now.
I love that. I love how it just kind of spread across your whole entire life and taught you different lessons, no matter where you were. Hip hop did that for you. And
sure.
I just think about the course itself at Wayne State University. What's some of your favorite parts about, just being there and learning and interacting with the kids who are not just kids, all the young adults and adults, but everyone there who's just so interested in hip hop?
Oh man, it's amazing because, I just always let them know, like, you guys have no idea what it took for me to be standing up here in front of y'all. Like, like parents saying, you should do something else or, good luck, you know what I'm saying? But like not really meaning it, you know what I mean? Like counselors saying like, even anything in the entertainment field is just not a guarantee. You know what I mean? It's like, so, but other fields, I guess they feel like it's like more of a chance that you could make it or whatever. Like, if you go and become a doctor, you're just going to automatically get hired. And, these people come out of school and they just have a bunch of debt and sometimes they can't get on. So I'm like, if I'm going to be trying to get on, I might as well do it with my own art, and use my youth while I can, So that's what I chose to do.
Yeah.
And I think we made the right decision.
Yeah. So far, I just think about where we are in the city of Detroit. I think about where we are in hip hop in general. I think about some of the young artists and some of the young acts that are coming up right now. We got Baby Tron. We have Skilla Baby. I mean, I personally really, Sada Baby. So many other names that are coming up right now. Where is hip hop in Detroit?
Hip hop in Detroit is on the uprise, man. It's a beautiful thing. I love to see it. So many different styles of hip hop coming out of Detroit. It always was, It's like you can't really put your finger on exactly what is a Detroit sound. And there's people that always say, well, you got these guys that's, supposed to be representing Detroit, but that's not the real Detroit. This is the real Detroit. You would always hear that. And now some of those people are getting their shot, because Detroit has been such an influence all over the country and all over the world. Because, African Americans in general are some of the most influential people in the world. And where better to come from than the blackest city in America?
I just love the way that just kind of solidified itself and it was a perfect period. So before I let you go, Nick, you talked about it's 313 Day. Shout out to 313 Day. You have an event tonight celebrating 313 Day.
Yes, I do. So shout out, first of all, Channel 4, my band, My Detroit Players. We're going to be rocking at that park that's right next to the Aretha. I forgot the name of it, but it's right there next to the Aretha. Channel 4 from 3:13 to 7 p.m. And then from 7 to 10, everybody RSVP, get yourself down to Playground Detroit. Nick Speed, Fat Ray of the Bruiser Brigade. We are celebrating my new turntables that I released. I came out with a portable turntables, battery powered. It's called Nick's Electronics.
So I'm gonna have to hold you real quick because I know we got to go. Ryan is here in the groove. Give us the plug, Ryan.
Oh man, well it's just nice to be on air with Nick Speed, who's in the DNA of Detroit music.
What's up?
Today on In the Groove, Detroiters only for 313 Day. These are not songs about Detroit. This is only Detroit musicians. I'm going to try to do the full canon, starting with the Clark Sisters as we open up In the Groove, coming up here on WDET. Shout out Nick Speed.
Let's get it.
Nick, Speed is a local hip-hop producer and DJ. You can catch Nick Speed around the city DJing and hosting Ghetto Tech brunches on Sundays. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Playground Detroit tonight, y'all. 2845 Gratiot.
That's going to do it for the Metro for March 13th, 2024. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show was produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our technical director is Nate Bender. Music's done by Sam Bobian. Our news director is Jerome Vaughn. And our program director is Adam Fox.
The Metro is a WDET production, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you want to support, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate.
WDET, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.